Some houses are abandoned, others are forgotten, and then there are houses that remember. I didn't believe that when we moved into Ashcroft Manor. If someone had told me that a house could hold memories the way people do, I would have laughed. A building was nothing more than wood, stone, and brick. It couldn't miss someone. It couldn't grieve. It certainly couldn't call a child's name in the middle of the night. At least that's what I believed before we arrived. My name is Michael Turner. I was 41 years old when my family moved into the old manor on the outskirts of Yorkshire. The decision had been practical, or at least it seemed that way. Property prices in London had become impossible. My wife Sarah and I wanted something quieter, somewhere our daughter could grow up surrounded by trees instead of traffic. When our estate agent showed us photographs of Ashcroft Manor, it seemed perfect, beautiful, historic, large enough for a family, suspiciously affordable. That last detail should have worried us. It didn't. We were too busy imagining a new beginning. The manor stood alone on a gentle hill overlooking miles of countryside. Ancient oak trees surrounded it like silent guardians. The stone walls were covered in ivy. Tall windows reflected the gray northern sky. The house looked like something from another century. Because it was. According to local records, Ashcroft Manor had stood there for more than 150 years. As our car approached the iron gates for the first time, Sarah smiled. "It's beautiful," I agreed. It was beautiful. But there was something else about it. Something difficult to describe. The house seemed to be watching us. Not in a threatening way. More like someone standing at a window waiting for visitors to arrive. The feeling disappeared quickly. I blamed the long drive. Nothing more. Our daughter Lily fell in love with the house immediately. She was 9 years old. Curious about everything. Fearless in the way only children can be. The moment she stepped through the front door, she ran upstairs to explore. "This one," she shouted minutes later. Sarah and I followed her voice. We found her standing inside a bedroom on the second floor. The room overlooked the back garden. Sunlight streamed from tall windows. Dust danced in the air. "I want this one." Sarah laughed. "You haven't even seen the others." "I don't need to." Lily smiled. "This room chose me. Children say strange things." We smiled and moved on. Yet later, lying awake in bed, I found myself remembering her words. This room chose me. For the first few days, life felt normal, busy, exhausting. We unpacked boxes, moved furniture, learned which floorboards creaked, which windows stuck, which doors refused to close properly. Every old house has its personality. Ashcroft Manor seemed no different. Then came the first night. I woke sometime after 2 in the morning. The room was dark. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Beside me, Sarah sat upright in bed. "Did you hear that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I listened. Nothing. Only rain. What Sarah hesitated, then shook her head. Never mind. She lay back down, but I noticed she didn't sleep for a long time afterward. The next morning, she seemed distracted, quiet. Eventually I asked what was bothering her. She hesitated, then laughed nervously. "I know this sounds ridiculous. What does?" She stirred her coffee. "Last night I thought I heard someone in the hallway." My stomach tightened slightly. What kind of someone? A child. The answer surprised me. A child. She nodded. I heard a voice. I waited. Sarah looked embarrassed, as if someone was whispering. What did it say? For a moment, she seemed reluctant to answer. Then she spoke. It said Lily. The room became strangely quiet. I smiled, trying to keep things light. Probably the wind. Probably. But neither of us sounded convinced. That evening, we forgot about it. Or at least we tried to. Life resumed. Boxes still needed unpacking. The garden needed attention. The roof leaked slightly above the east wing. Normal problems, comforting problems. Yet the whisper returned. The following night, and the night after that. Always around the same time. Always in the hallway. Always saying the same thing. Lily. 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 One evening, Sarah finally mentioned it in front of our daughter. To my surprise, Lily didn't seem frightened. Quite the opposite. She sounds sad. Sarah and I exchanged a glance. Who sounds sad? I asked. The little girl. The fork slipped from my hand. What little girl? Lily shrugged. The one who keeps calling. The room suddenly felt colder. You've heard it too, of course. She said it so casually, as though discussing the weather. Sarah leaned forward. What exactly do you hear? Lily thought for a moment. A little girl looking for someone. My chest tightened. Does she say anything else? Lily nodded. Sometimes. What does she say? The answer came quietly. She asks where her mother went. Neither Sarah nor I knew how to respond. That night, I checked every room in the house, every hallway, every window, every locked door. Nothing. No intruder. No hidden child. No explanation. The house remained silent. For nearly a week afterward, nothing happened. The whispers disappeared. Life returned to normal. We began relaxing. The strange experiences felt distant, almost silly. Then one night, everything changed. A storm rolled across Yorkshire shortly after midnight. Thunder shook the windows. Rain hammered against the roof. I woke suddenly. Not because of the storm, because of crying. At first I thought it was Lily. The sound seemed faint, distant, a child sobbing softly. I climbed out of bed and stepped into the hallway. The crying continued. Not from Lily's room, not from downstairs, from somewhere inside the walls. I stood completely still, listening. The sound was unmistakable. A little girl, crying, heartbroken, alone. Every rational thought vanished. Slowly, I followed the sound. The crying grew louder near the second-floor corridor. I pressed my ear against the wallpaper. The sobbing intensified immediately, as though whoever was crying stood only inches away, separated from me by wood and plaster. My heart pounded. The storm outside seemed far away now. The entire world had narrowed to that single sound. Then the crying stopped. Silence filled the hallway. For several seconds, nothing happened. I almost convinced myself I had imagined everything. Then a small voice spoke. Clear, soft, terrifyingly close, directly inside the wall. Have you seen my mother? Every hair on my body stood upright. I stumbled backward. The voice belonged to a child, a little girl, lonely, lost, and somehow impossibly sad. Thunder exploded outside. The lights flickered. For one brief moment, I thought I saw the outline of a small hand pressing against the wallpaper from the other side. Then darkness swallowed the hallway, and the voice vanished, leaving only silence, and the terrible feeling that Ashcroft Manor had been waiting a very long time for someone to listen. For several seconds after the voice disappeared, I remained frozen in the hallway. The storm continued raging outside. Thunder rolled across the countryside. Rain lashed against the windows, yet none of those sounds frightened me. Only the voice. The little girl's voice. Have you seen my mother? The question lingered in my mind long after the hallway fell silent. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't angry. If anything, it sounded heartbreakingly innocent. Like a child asking a question she had repeated countless times. A child still hoping someone would answer. Eventually I returned to bed. I didn't tell Sarah everything, only that I had heard something strange. She looked at me carefully, the way people do when they already know the truth but are waiting for you to admit it. You heard her too. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Neither of us slept much after that. The following morning, the storm had vanished. Sunlight illuminated the gardens. Birds filled the trees. Everything looked perfectly normal, almost insultingly normal. Yet Ashcroft Manor no longer felt like a house. It felt like a mystery, and mysteries have a way of demanding answers. After breakfast, I drove into the village. The local library occupied a stone building older than most modern countries. Its shelves contained generations of records, newspapers, and property documents. If the house held secrets, this was where they would be buried. The librarian, an elderly woman named Margaret Collins, seemed delighted to help. When I mentioned Ashcroft Manor, her smile faded slightly. That old place. You know it, Margaret nodded. Everyone around here knows it. Something about her tone caught my attention. What can you tell me? She hesitated, then motioned for me to follow. Together we disappeared into the archive room. Dust covered everything. The smell of old paper filled the air. Margaret began pulling records from shelves. Family histories, property transfers, newspaper clippings. As the hours passed, a story slowly emerged. The manor once belonged to the Whitmore family, one of the wealthiest families in Yorkshire during the early 20th century. They lived there for decades. Then something happened. Margaret handed me a yellowed newspaper. The headline immediately caught my eye. Local child, missing. 1912. My pulse quickened. I began reading. The article described the disappearance of a young girl, 9 years old, last seen inside Ashcroft Manor. An extensive search followed. Police investigated. Volunteers combed the surrounding countryside. The child was never found. No body. No explanation. Nothing. Only a missing girl. I swallowed hard. What was her name? Margaret looked down at the article, then answered quietly. Lily Whitmore. The room suddenly felt colder. For a moment, I genuinely thought I had misheard. Lily. Yes. My heart pounded. The same name. The exact same name as my daughter. An impossible coincidence. Yet somehow I knew it wasn't. When I returned home that evening, Sarah immediately noticed something was wrong. I told her everything. The missing girl. The newspaper. The name. Sarah listened in silence. When I finished, she looked toward the staircase. Toward Lily's room. Do you think that's why the voice keeps calling her? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. And because the possibility terrified me. That night, the house changed. The first sign appeared shortly after midnight. Sarah woke me, her face pale. Michael, what is it? She pointed toward the bedroom wall. For several seconds I saw nothing. Then I noticed it. Letters. Dark letters appearing slowly beneath the wallpaper, as though written from the other side. My breath caught. The word formed one letter at a time. Mother. The final letter appeared. Then the word vanished. Completely. As if it had never existed. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. A few minutes later, another word appeared. This time on the ceiling. I'm here. Then it disappeared too. By dawn, neither Sarah nor I believed we were imagining anything. The following days became increasingly difficult. The house seemed desperate to communicate. Words appeared throughout the manor. On mirrors. Walls. Windows. Always briefly. Always disappearing moments later. Don't leave me, where are you, mother? The messages never felt threatening. Only sorrowful. Like fragments of a grief too old to fade. Yet the most disturbing changes occurred in Lily. At first, they were subtle. She became quieter, more thoughtful, more distant. One evening, I found her sitting alone in the garden, watching the empty fields beyond the trees. What are you thinking about? She didn't answer immediately. Finally, she said she's lonely. A chill ran through me. Who? The other Lily. The words struck like ice. I sat beside her. What do you mean? Lily looked toward the manor. She visits me sometimes. My stomach tightened. In dreams, she nodded. What does she want? Lily considered the question carefully. She wants to find her mother. The sadness in her voice broke my heart. What else does she tell you? For a long moment, Lily remained silent. Then she pointed toward the upper floor. The attic. That single word changed everything. The attic occupied the highest part of the manor, a vast forgotten space beneath the roof. We had barely explored it. The area was cluttered with old furniture, broken trunks, and decades of dust. Nothing unusual, at least that's what I thought. The next morning I climbed the narrow staircase leading upward. The attic felt untouched by time. Sunlight filtered through small circular windows. Dust swirled through the air. Every step stirred decades of silence. For nearly an hour I found nothing. Then I noticed a section of flooring beneath a stack of rotting furniture. The wood looked newer than the surrounding boards. Someone had covered something. My pulse quickened. Slowly, I moved the furniture aside. Beneath it sat a small wooden chest. The lock had rusted away long ago. I opened it carefully. Inside rested a collection of forgotten treasures. A porcelain doll, faded ribbons, children's drawings, a silver locket, and a small leather-bound journal. The moment I touched it, I knew it belonged to the missing girl. Lily Whitmore. I sat cross-legged on the dusty floor and began reading. The entries were written in careful handwriting. Simple observations, games, family outings, stories about her mother. The journal transformed the missing child into a real person. Not a newspaper headline, not a ghost, a little girl. One who loved flowers, one who hated thunderstorms, one who missed her mother whenever she left the house. As I read, my heart grew heavier. The final pages became increasingly emotional, increasingly lonely. The last entry occupied only a single page. I stared at it for a very long time. The words were faded, but still readable. If Mother comes back, tell her I waited. My vision blurred. I wasn't sure whether the tears belonged to me or to the house itself, because suddenly everything made sense. The voices, the sadness, the endless search. For more than a century, something inside Ashcroft Manor had been waiting. Waiting for a mother who never returned. Waiting for someone to remember. Waiting for someone to listen. That night, the house became louder than ever before. Around midnight, every floorboard creaked simultaneously. Doors opened throughout the manor. Cold air rushed through the halls. Then the voices began. Not one voice, many. Whispers drifting through every room, every corridor, every staircase, repeating the same word, again, and again, and again. Mother, mother, mother. Sarah grabbed my hand. Lily sat upright in bed. The entire house seemed alive. The whispers rose until they filled every wall, every shadow, every corner. And then from somewhere deep inside Ashcroft Manor, a child's voice spoke clearly above all the others. A voice filled with hope. A voice that had waited more than 100 years. Mother. And for the first time since we moved into the manor, I realized something terrifying. The house wasn't haunted. The house was grieving. The whispers continued until dawn. Not loud, not frightening, just endless. A single word carried through every wall of Ashcroft Manor. Mother. Again and again. As if the entire house had become a living memory. Sarah sat beside Lily throughout the night. Neither of them slept. Neither did I. The journal remained open on the dining table. The final sentence stared back at me every time I looked away. If Mother comes back, tell her I waited. I could not stop imagining the little girl who had written those words. A child trapped somewhere inside this enormous house. A child waiting for footsteps that never came. A child who never stopped believing her mother would return. The next morning, I returned to the attic. This time, I brought blueprints, property records, every document I could find. Somewhere inside Ashcroft Manor was the answer, and I was determined to find it. Hours passed. Dust coated my clothes. My knees ached from crawling across ancient floorboards. The attic seemed endless. Dark corners stretched beneath the roof. Old furniture stood like silent sentries. Then I noticed something strange. One wall was thicker than it should have been. Not by much, just enough. Enough to create a hidden space. My pulse quickened. I measured again, then again. The numbers never changed. There was a room behind the wall. A room that shouldn't exist. By late afternoon, I had found it. A section of timber hidden behind shelving, carefully concealed, almost invisible, as though someone had wanted it forgotten. The moment I touched the wood, a cold shiver ran through me. Not fear, recognition. Like the house itself had been waiting for this moment. Sarah joined me. Together we removed the panels. The opening revealed darkness beyond. A small chamber. No windows. No visible exit. Only silence. The flashlight trembled in my hand as I stepped inside. The room had remained untouched for over a century. Dust covered everything. A small chair stood near one wall. A faded blanket lay folded neatly in a corner. Beside it sat a porcelain doll, the same doll from the chest. Then I saw the bones. Small, fragile, child-sized. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Sarah began crying softly. I couldn't move. The reality was too devastating. The missing child, the endless whispers, the grieving house. Everything suddenly made sense. Lily Whitmore had never disappeared. She had never run away. She had never left the manor. She had died here, alone, waiting, still believing her mother would come. Near the skeleton rested a small envelope. Its paper had yellowed with age, yet somehow it remained intact. Carefully I opened it. Inside was a single folded page. The handwriting matched the journal. Small, neat, hopeful. The words nearly broke my heart. Dear Mother, I know you are trying to come back. I know you haven't forgotten me. The room is dark now, but I'm not afraid anymore. I can hear the birds outside. I think it must be morning. If you find this, please don't cry. I love you. Love Lily. Tears blurred my vision. Even Sarah couldn't hold back her sobs. No ghost story had prepared me for this. No horror tale. No supernatural mystery. Because the true horror wasn't death. It was loneliness. A child spending her final days believing she had been abandoned. And a mother spending the rest of her life searching for a daughter she would never find. The following week changed everything. Authorities arrived. Historians, police, archaeologists. The story spread throughout Yorkshire, then across the country. For the first time in more than 100 years, Lily Whitmore's name appeared in newspapers again. Not as a missing child, as a child finally found. Researchers uncovered the rest of the tragedy. Her mother had searched relentlessly. Months became years. She followed rumors, investigated sightings, refused to give up. Then tragedy struck. She died in an accident while traveling home after another failed lead. She never knew her daughter had remained inside Ashcroft Manor all along. When I learned that detail, I finally understood the whispers. The house wasn't haunted by hatred, or revenge, or evil. It was haunted by unfinished love. A daughter searching for her mother, a mother searching for her daughter. Both lost, both waiting. A memorial service was held in the village church. Hundreds attended. Some came out of curiosity, others out of sympathy. Many came simply because the story touched something deep inside them. Everyone understands loss. Everyone understands waiting. And everyone understands the hope that refuses to die. Lily Whitmore was finally laid to rest beside her family. The ceremony ended beneath a clear blue sky, the first truly beautiful day since we arrived. As people departed, I noticed something unusual. The wind had stopped, completely. The trees stood motionless. The air felt peaceful, almost relieved. That evening, Ashcroft Manor was different. The silence no longer felt heavy. The shadows no longer felt sad. The house seemed lighter, as though a burden carried for more than a century had finally been lifted. Days passed. No whispers, no voices, no messages appearing on walls. The strange phenomena vanished entirely. Life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as life can be after discovering a century-old tragedy hidden inside your home. Then came the final morning. The morning I will never forget. Lily was standing in the garden before school. The sun had just risen. Golden light covered the fields. Birds sang among the trees. Everything felt peaceful. Then she froze. Looking toward the old oak tree near the edge of the property, I followed her gaze and saw her, a little girl, 9 years old, standing beneath the branches. Her white dress moved gently in the breeze. Golden hair shimmered in the sunlight. For the first time, there was no sadness in her face. Only peace. Only happiness. She looked exactly as I imagined Lily Whitmore would have looked. The child turned toward our daughter. Their eyes met, and then she smiled. Not the smile of a ghost. The smile of a child finally going home. Slowly, she raised her hand. A small wave. A simple goodbye. Then she looked toward the sky, as though someone stood there waiting. Someone she had searched for all her life. Someone who had searched for her. Tears filled Lily's eyes. "What did she say?" Sarah whispered. Our daughter smiled through her tears. The answer came softly. She said she found her mother. The figure began fading. The sunlight grew brighter around her, warmer, gentler, until eventually she disappeared completely. The garden stood empty once more. Only birdsong remained. Only morning. Only peace. Years have passed since then. We still live in Ashcroft Manor. Visitors often ask whether strange things continue to happen, whether we hear whispers, whether we see ghosts. The answer is no. The house is silent now, beautifully silent, because it was never haunted by death. It was haunted by love, and once that love finally found its way home, the house remembered no longer. It simply rested, at peace, just as Lily Whitmore finally was.